So, what if I told you that a super simple question about a color wheel could actually, change the way you see everything? Today, we're going to dive into this really cool idea from Ian Gonger, and it all kicks off with this one kind of profound question. Why isn't there a seam on the color wheel? I know, it sounds simple, but the answer, well, it gets into problem solving, creativity, and even the nature of reality itself. All right, so we've all seen this, right? The color wheel. It's basically the entire beautiful, continuous rainbow of light that our eyes can pick up. You've got red on one end with its lower frequency, and it flows all the way around to violet on the other with a higher frequency. I mean, this is the visual palette for our whole world. Okay, but here's where it gets interesting. Here's that question again. See, the actual spectrum of light is a straight line, right? It starts with red, it ends with violet. So why, when we bend it into a circle, is there no seam, no break? You'd think where the two ends meet, you'd see some kind of jarring line, but nope. It's just a totally smooth transition. Why is that? What's going on there? And this seamless little mystery, it's not really about light and color at all. It's actually a huge metaphor for how we understand pretty much everything. To get why we even expect to see a seam in the first place, we gotta look at how our brains are fundamentally wired to think. You know, the philosopher Hegel pointed this out. He said, we basically make sense of the world through opposites. Think about it. You only really know what hot is because you know what cold is. Light needs dark. It's this constant game of this versus that helps us build our whole picture of reality. So much of our world is defined by these pairs. But there's a catch with this kind of binary thinking. What happens when that this or that way of seeing things becomes a trap, when it actually starts to limit our choices and, what's even possible? Well, it shoves us into what's called a zero-sum game. And the rules here are simple and honestly kind of brutal. It means the pie is only so big. For me to get a bigger slice, your slice has to get smaller. My win is your loss, period. It's a worldview built entirely on competition and the idea that there's just not enough to go around. And a game like that, it always needs an opponent. It needs an other. You have to have a them to define your us. To figure out who we are, we first have to decide who we're not. Our entire identity gets wrapped up in being the opposite of someone else or some other group or idea. And that right there just shrinks the world of possibilities for everybody involved. Okay, but what if that whole binary trap is just an illusion? What if there's a way to break out of that this or that mindset and just completely expand the entire playing field? This is where we get to the core idea, creative dialectics. It's a whole different way of thinking. It's not about choosing between option A and option B. No, it's about creating a totally new option C that nobody even saw coming. It's about rising above that initial conflict and just opening up a whole new territory of what's possible. So you can really see two different ways to think here. On one side, you have what's called negative critique. This is convergent thinking. It's all about narrowing things down, eliminating options, trying to find that one single right answer. It's always asking either or. But on the other side, you've got synthetic critique. This is divergent. It opens things up. It asks, hey, what if it's both and? It's about exploring all the wild possibilities to create something brand new. All right, so this all sounds pretty cool in theory, right? But how do we actually do this? How do we use this expansive both and kind of thinking in the real world? How do we start playing a better game? Well, one really powerful application is this idea of positive sum activism. So instead of seeing justice as this big fight where one side has to lose for the other to win, it just completely reframes the problem. The goal becomes, how do we design better systems and experiences where everyone benefits? It's about turning justice into a win-win. And human-centered design is a perfect example of this in action. The process starts with empathy, but not just for the main customer or the end user. No, it's about empathy for everyone involved in the system. And by really understanding what everybody needs, designers can build solutions that create way more value for the whole ecosystem. Here's another great strategy. It's a French word, bricolage. And what it means is basically the art of making do with whatever you've got on hand. It's creative problem solving, using the tools and materials you already have, but in totally new and unexpected ways. It's all about seeing fresh potential in ordinary stuff. The anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss put it perfectly. He said the bricolaire, the person doing this, isn't stuck on what their tools are supposed to be for. They look at a limited set of stuff, and through sheer creativity, they find almost infinite possibilities. They're able to totally reimagine what something is by focusing on what it could do. Okay, so how does all this creative thinking and playing a better game, how does it bring us back to where we started? How does it solve that original mystery about the color wheel? And here it is, the big reveal. There is no seam on the color wheel because the seam was never real to begin with. It's an illusion. It's an artificial line we invented in our heads by thinking of the spectrum as a straight line with two ends. The act of bending that line into a circle where red just melts into violet, that is the creative act. We literally create the seamless whole ourselves just by choosing to see beyond the supposed opposition of the two ends. And that, right there, is the ultimate lesson. The color wheel is teaching us that so many of the hard lines, the separations, the us versus them things we see in the world, they're really just failures of imagination. The moment we decide to move beyond them and look for the connections instead, we expand our own territory of what's possible. And this is not just some philosophical mind game, you know? Applying this kind of thinking could help us solve some of our biggest global challenges. We could actually shift from a world built on scarcity to one of abundance. I mean, think about it. Harvesting the practically infinite energy of the sun, creating tech to provide clean water for every single person, using digital worlds to expand and enrich our physical one. So often, the only limits that really exist are the ones we've put there ourselves. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What's a false seam in your own world? What this or that conflict, maybe at your job, in your community, or even just in your own life, is actually a seamless whole, just waiting for you to make that creative leap and see it differently?